Welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. It's 10:26. We're a minute late. It's fine. But just want to get us started. We have a lot to share. We also really want to make time for small group discussion because look at us, we're in person. So let's talk to each other. Maybe, yeah, that'd be cool. So welcome everyone to the session on exploring access and equity in work-based learning. I'm Heather Penzak. I'm the Director of Innovation and Implementation. There we go. And I'm with Education Systems Center, Ed Systems, lead a lot of work in work-based learning, but I'm actually not going to talk today, which is very exciting besides this one moment. You're going to hear from two communities here in Illinois. You're going to hear from Leyden High School. They're going to share about some work they're really doing internally within their school, with their team and with their programs. And then you're going to hear from East St. Louis Senior High School. Okay. And they're going to be sharing really a lot about their partnership work and how they're thinking more intentionally about that. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to pass around here in a moment. I'm like out of breath up here and a little nervous on the stage. I'm going to pass around in a moment. We put together like a graphic organizer for you all. So if you want to capture notes on that, we will have that for you all. Without further ado, I will turn to Frank.
All right, I'm gonna try to use my teacher voice. So first of all, can everyone in the back hear me? All right, awesome. So I just want to take a second to talk about who we have here. My name is Frank Holthouse. I'm our Director of Careers at Leyden High Schools. We have Michael Kuhn, Director of DBR, our EFE in the region. We're gonna talk a little bit about our journey around work-based learning and equity. So I'll start by talking a little bit about Leyden High Schools. We serve 3,500 students over two campuses, the East and the West Campus. They're both 9 through 12 building, comprehensive buildings. Our students are 71% Hispanic, 16% English language learners. We are a youth qualified for Title I funds. Overall, our students exit 40% at 4-year university or college, 40% at Triton College, which is our community college partner, awesome partner by the way, and 20% do the college, or sorry, military service, careers, etc. Our work in equity really began in 2020 when our Board of Education came together and developed an equity statement and equity goals. This is the first time our board has done this work. I just want to read just an excerpt of a couple of things they said, but this really began our work at a district level, and you'll see how it funnels down to what we've done in work-based learning. First was raising academic achievement of all students while eliminating differences in academic achievement among, not paraphrasing this, we're all going to be here all day. Recruiting and hiring and retaining diverse staff that enhances the community. Establishing and strengthening community partnerships. Ensuring equitable distribution of resources throughout the district. Continue to monitor and adapt anti-discrimination, anti-racist practices, ensuring all board members and staff examine and change educational practices, policies, and processes that may contribute or perpetuate historical disparities. And all those were framed under our mission and vision, which is to educate, enrich, and empower students and communities. So that was our call to action, and it was from the top, from our Board of Education. So a clear directive for us to act as a district. Here's some of our big actions we've taken. The first was to define for every member, whether it's certified concept by staff member, what is equity and what was inequity. Right away, we have people say, hey, I got too many kids in my class, that's inequitable. That's not really what we're talking about here. So we spent a lot of time defining equity and inequity. The inequity is a little bit shorter of a definition. I'll read that one for you. To maintain, equitable practice, to maintain systems, policies, and practices that present barriers to marginalized people. That's a shorter one. The equity one, again, we'd be here for a while, so I'll leave that right after. With that, we began our committee work, and we really did it at 2 different levels. We had a district leadership team, so our department chairs, district administrators, they begun really digging into equity. And we had our students on the other side. What is their lens? What kind of work they're basing from their experience in the classroom? Along that work, we did 2 different book studies. I highly recommend these 2 books. So the first one is Culturally Responsive Teaching, and the framed by dynamic. It really answers the why behind this work, and it does so from like a science lens. So if you have a sister in your district that like haven't gone in yet, this is a great starting point for them. And then for those that are ready to do the work, street data is what we're reading right now. It is fantastic. It's those in your district or institution that are ready to take action. This is a great student-centered approach to faculty work. And so we're in the middle of that work right now. Our leadership team, our faculty and staff have gone through beyond diversity training through courageous conversations. For me, it was transformative. I really walked in day one thinking like, right, this is a lot of time for dedicating to equity. Can we use that in a better way? And I left saying, oh my goodness, this was the right use of our time, and this was very powerful. So I highly recommend that. But some of the protocols we implemented locally within our district was to notice, name, and to interrupt. And this is something that if we have a newsletter, sure, lots of people do that, but they share with staff every week. Here's how we notice, name, and interrupt. So I'll share a quick example from our Yale department. Many students who are part of our Yale department often take a course called Bilingual Skills Development, designed to provide support and ensure that students stay on track. It was noticed that previously students who took this course received no credit despite their work alongside faculty. It was named, and we're in the process of working with members of our Yale department to interrupt that practice by ultimately providing credits. Right? So that's a protocol we've established, and that's just one small example. We see this over and over again, and we're mirroring that for our other faculty members that we're noticed, naming, and interrupting throughout our district and growing together. Our last thing, and this is the part that's a little bit more CTE focused, is that just like many schools, we're struggling to find teachers. And we also noticed that our population, 71% Hispanic, does not match our teaching population, which is 80% over 80% Caucasian. Right? There's a little bit of disconnect, not representation there that we'd like to see. So how do we solve that and still honor the work that we're doing? We really double down on our alumni. So we call it the Golden Ticket Initiative. We're encouraging students to come back, become educators in our district or at one of our partner schools. They're guaranteed an interview if they apply for a teaching position at Leyden or any one of our partner schools. If they are hired for a full-time position, our Board of Education is willing to give them a $5,000 sign. So that's great. Eventually, we do that enough. Our student population and our teaching population, they're going to look a lot alike. Not just that, we're going to have deep roots in the community. And there's tons of other benefits. So this is our work at a district lens. What I want to do is talk a little bit about how that's interacted with our work-based learning. These are some of the B's that we notice, or D's. Some of the barriers we notice when talking to students about our traditional co-op program. So we have a traditional co-op program in class for one period, and then they have that release to go out and work on something. And what we saw was everything from driver's licenses to paying for uniforms to onboarding our undocumented students was a challenge. And for some students it wasn't. For others, they faced this barrier and they could not go. And again, notice, name, and interrupt. We went through that protocol after talking to students, and we'll talk a little bit about like how we identified all these barriers. I knew about some. I really didn't know about all these until we sat down and talked to the kids. But that was transformative for us. And that's what led us to work with Mr. Kuhn here. I don't know if you want to come up and talk a little bit. All right. And really change our program. So the first thing we did was we doubled down on school-based enterprises because we have more control over what that looks like for students, and we can help eliminate those barriers that were previously. The second thing we decided to do was do more vetting of the off-site locations. We always had a site visit to make sure it was safe, looking at the land, that we're complying with all the laws. But now we're getting into the mindset of the culture that building and sending that student out to, and does that match the culture that we're trying to instill within our district. So professional development for our teachers. If you you're not familiar with the NAEP organization, they are fantastic. They have so many toolkits that are super accessible, and they do a lot of training. So we have been doing that work, and we continue to do that work. As I mentioned before, empathy interviews was the only way that we knew about all those barriers that were really in our previous work-based learning program. So we took the time, and it does take time, to sit down one-on-one with students and really get their feedback. And that's been huge on how we've developed our work-based learning. And when we do our co-op program, we're so used to soliciting feedback from the employer that we didn't really do anything for the students. What was their experience? Was their direct supervisor professional at times? Like, let's talk and get some voice from the student on there. So we found a balance there in our way that we assess students. But probably the unique one here is, as I mentioned before, we have some undocumented students who could not participate in the traditional labor force, not be on board in the same way that a different student. So finding creative ways to honor that work outside the school day is important. So if we have opportunities to find scholarships, you can fund students' time outside of the classroom, and that is important to do. And finally, to leverage alumni. Our alumni have been through the school and really know where the gaps are and where the strengths are. So this is my last slide. It's out of time, but this is what it looks like in practice of our school-based enterprise. We have different examples, but I'll start with TSI or Tech Support Internship. For us, we went along with Google Chromebook 2012. Instead of hiring a ton of level 1 tech support for all those 3,500 devices that were new to the district, we said, hey, students, we have an authentic learning experience for you. Let's go ahead and work as level 1 tech support. So they do all the ticketing, they do all the break fixes, they're honoring, they're doing all the work on the devices of the teachers and the students. Now, that is not consistent, right? On Mondays, we got a lot of tickets. On Tuesdays, not so many tickets. What do? Then we go credential focused. So our students are earning their CompTIA Plus, Network Plus, Microsoft Office Specialist credential, and they're not doing that. And again, Bright College is our partner on all this work. So you'll see at every single one of these examples, dual credit or articulated credit. And so we have articulated credit that students get in response to that credential that they run. I'll just call out one other one, and that's our Education Academy. We were recipients of the CTE Ed Grant, and that work's helped us a lot. Partner with our feeder districts, we send students out to our feeder districts, and that's a lot of work on that mentor teacher to help facilitate observation hours, give feedback on their lessons, actually implement a lesson. And so now we can give an honorarium to those teachers for the work that they're doing. Again, everything we do is based on authenticity. So at TPA focus, so that they're ready for the next step. Or if it's our auto service class, we're bringing in car dealers to tell us what do we do right on the way that we wrote this ticket, what do we do wrong. You see any rework here that would have to happen. So all those examples are how we've changed work-based learning to be more equitable. We really found the solutions within school. I miss anything? Nope. Not too good time. All right.
You want to do questions?
Yes, sir.
But what is the responsibility of students from the it's in progress, right? So this is like year one of that work for some of these spaces. So I don't know yet. I think number one. The direction that students. That's what we call it ground up the street data. It is also important to have satellite data, which is where do we see the trends? So like where the outcomes that we track all that as far as concentrators. Just a little bit more. Sure. I think so. Let me know if I answered the wrong way. So it's kind of twofold. First is on the front end. So we have systemically across the district, what we give is youth science, one of the assessments we give, and we also give another career survey. So we map both of those. Youth science, fantastic, really value their work. But the data we get from that will help determine whether or not they tested into that career pathway. And then the companies that we do partner with that are external, we make sure that, again, when we talk about mindset, they will to pay for some of their post-secondary education or all their post-secondary education. And a lot of, especially in our manufacturing sector, is where the heaviest. We do see that a lot. And so those are the pathways that we have. We really spell out those next several years. Do this for 2 years, pay for this, and now you're full time. Does that help? Got time for one more, maybe? Students have full range of choice. Which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because they could get a lot of level one courses and really not focused on down a pathway. And so we just have to help them through really engaging exercises by highlighting what some of the outcomes are. And not easy work necessarily for a teenager.
And to back that up, we also have programs that we're starting next year. And actually, Leyden started it before your CNA program that's done outside their campus. It's done at Triton College. So students actually go there after hours and do their coursework and they do their clinicals on Saturday. So next year, we're actually starting, because of our equity statement, with all of our high schools and starting 4 programs of study that's going to be held at the college, where students are going to be bused from the high schools to the college. And then the high schools are actually picking up the cost of that tuition. So if you think about a true equity standpoint, we're saying, look, we don't have these programs at the high schools. They have them at the college. We're starting what we call our cohort. So it's a high school cohort for 2 hours in the morning. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it wasn't easy working with the college. I mean, it was a struggle, but now we have the college coming to us with programs and saying, hey, we want to start this next year. Like, we want to do this next year with you. We want to do this next year. And we're like, exactly. You might want to. Yeah, you got one more.
Traditional co-op, we run 2 separate districts, weights of about 70 students. Pretty small. Actually, we look at a state report card, came out 0, because just counting traditional co-op before we did the work with DVR to define our school-based enterprises. Now, considering school-based enterprises, I'd probably say about 25% of the population is there. So again, a lot more access, which is awesome.
So Frank, how many students are in your TSI program, for example, in a year?
We run 7 periods at roughly 12 students per period per campus, 14 times. Number 98.
And that's just one program, one school, right? Or is that both schools?
That's one school. Yep.
So that's times 2.
Okay. I am going to use the mic because I just want to make sure everybody can hear me this morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Miss Jazlyn Stanciel. I'm the Career Pathway Supervisor for East St. Louis Senior High School. So in our program, we have actually 10 programs at our high school. Everything is in-house. So all the way from our education to automotive to CNA, every classroom has a lab and also a classroom on the other side. So all the training that the students get, they get them right at our high school. Now, in our career pathways, we offer dual credit and industry certification in every pathway. So the way we do that is we partner with our local community college, which is Southwestern Illinois College. Now, we work with Heather and NIU Ed Systems this year to align our courses with SWIC and SIUE, which is Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. So our whole goal with the pathways is to make sure, can I turn this up a little bit? Does it go up a little bit? I'm good. Okay, good. Okay, I just want to make sure it sounds good. Okay. So with our pathway classes, we want to make sure that students are college and career ready. So in the past, right, we just make sure they take some classes and follow along the course guide. But that we noticed that that's not good enough. When students are getting into certain fields, like the medical field per se, they'll get there and they'll have never seen certain jargon, or they won't know how to read certain things. So we wanted to make sure that at the high school level that they are getting more exposure, especially when it comes to STEM fields. Now, pathways exposure is important, and I heard at the keynote, she said it gets a lot of criticism, but pathways are important because they expose students to a range of careers, and they also address the workforce shortage, which is a really big thing in Illinois as far as education, STEM, and business. So let's talk equity a little bit. People of color are more likely to choose lower paying career paths. So our school is 97% African American. So the best way for me to tell you is, yes, everybody needs shoes, but people need shoes that fit. So for our population of African American students, our approach might be different than your school. So that being said, African American college students are more likely to pursue majors that lead to lower paying jobs, which means we end up in more future debt and underemployment. So we are overrepresented in helping professions like social work and counseling and things like that, which is great, but we want our students to push towards different fields so that they can make more money, right? We don't want them to just be stuck at livable wage careers. We want them to have careers that not only they can progress in, but they can make more money. So the research will also be linked in the profile that we give you all. So this is a PBS article if you want to read more about it. So all African Americans represent 12% of the US populations, but are underrepresented in the degree holders when it comes to STEM, health, and business. So we started kind of brainstorming with NIU Ed Systems. How do we address that? We have a CNA pathway. So African Americans are overrepresented in CNA as well and lower level health careers. So we started talking more about, okay, we want our students to aim more than just CNA. We want them to know that's just the entry, that's the beginning, that's just getting your foot in the door. Honestly, it was a big debate. Okay, so in this debate, we talked about, well, our students like CNA and phlebotomy, but how do we move them past that? We want them to want to be nurse practitioners or physician's assistants. So pathways address that in the aspect of we are trying to expose them to a range and show them that, hey, this is the bottom, but there's also a top. So if you're going to start at our school and you actually like the CNA classes, maybe go on to SWIC to do something else. Maybe you'll choose SIUE, but don't just stop at the high school level just because you got a certification. So we want to try to expose students as much as possible. So with NIU Ed Systems, we laid this framework, and on the side, you see kind of all the entry level classes, but where it can go. So it's important when students are picking their classes that they'll see the pathways and say, okay, if I start in CNA, I can potentially become a nurse practitioner, right? This is just the beginning of my journey. So it's important when we lay the pathways that it's not just a focus on, okay, these are my 4 classes that I need to take to graduate and get the certification. But at the college level, These are the classes that they suggest to be these things that are at the next level. We want our students to be able to go on and not get stuck, especially when we talk about careers like phlebotomy. Phlebotomists at max are going to make maybe $22 an hour, right? That's not a lot to be able to support a family. So we want our students to be able to not only love what they do, but be able to support themselves in the future. So you might ask, what do we do about this, right? That's the perplexing thing. When I go to conferences, I always am thinking about the how. So I heard someone in the audience say, well, who do we lean on when there's a lack of funding? I say the companies. So if companies have a workforce shortage, they have to be willing to invest in youth. So what that means is they have to pay for some uniforms. They have to pay for some education. They have to pay for training. And the way we do that is detailed MOU agreements. In the past, we might say, be our partner, but we don't necessarily outline what it means to actually be a partner. So be firm and be specific when you're working with organizations, because the school might not have the money, but a major company like Spire, Ameren, companies like that, they have the money. So utilize their dollars to be able to move your students along, and don't be afraid to ask for the big ask. Okay. Host site assessments. Every site is not a good site. So every company that approaches you to say, we want your students, you actually need to go there and see, are they ready for your students? Is it safe there? Do they have the means and the bandwidth to be able to give your students the support you want, the mentorship, right? Work-based learning is not just about, oh, you got a job and we needed you, right? And you come here and get a paycheck. We want our students to experience mentorship. We want them to feel like they know where their career can go. We want them to be able to learn and reflect as they go along this journey. So I always evaluate my host site. Sometimes I might even drop in just because I want to see what is it like when I'm not around, or maybe when you're not expecting me. So another thing is employability skills prep. Companies always talk about how students are not prepared, period, right? Whether that means that they're on their phones, or they don't know what to say, or they might not have enough hustle on the job. Well, on the education side, it's our responsibility to make sure that they're prepared to go. Every sector does not require the same thing, right? So if I'm somebody that's going to be sending a student to construction, I'm not going to tell them the same skills and pep talk as I'm going to tell my educators that are going to be coming out of the education pathway. So remember that you need to tailor the skills depending upon where the student is going, and there needs to be extensive prep before they get there. It's in-person student orientation. So a lot of times we go, we meet, and then we send the student. I don't do that. It's multiple steps for you to be able to get one of my students, which means we talk, we plan. I do a preparation with the student, and then I make sure that on orientation day, me and the student go together. We sit, we have a conversation. After we leave the orientation, I ask the student, how do you feel? What's the vibe you're getting? Because I don't want them to feel stuck. Just because you went to the orientation doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do the opportunity, right? We want to make sure it's the best fit for you, as well as consistent check-ins. My students check in with me every week, right? Even if it's just, hey, how's it going? Are you still liking it? You like the pay? Do you feel like it's worth it? But we also have set check-ins monthly. That's a written feedback from a student saying, these are the things I feel like I did good on. These are the things I feel like I need to grow on, as well from the employer. So I can look at those two things and I say, okay, do they match? Does it look like this is a good process as we're going along? The worst thing that can happen is when we send a student to a site and then they turn around at the end and they say, I hated it. And I'm like, why you didn't tell me that? Because they don't want to disappoint me, right? But at the same time, sometimes they need to let me know during those times what's going on so I can kind of troubleshoot to see what's going on, to see if they have a quality experience. And structured mentorship documents, which you all will get like digitally after this. So I have a set check-in and questions that the employer is supposed to ask the student. So employers, they don't know how to work with students. They know they want people, but they don't necessarily know what to ask them, right? So give them a little guide saying, ask them these questions, write down the responses. The employers need training too, whether they recognize it or not. A lot of time employers are out of date, right? There are a few generations older than our students. So we might need to say, hey, this is Gen Z. They do things just a little bit differently. So be prepared, okay? Like any other school, we definitely have our barriers and growth areas that we're constantly working on. In our community, East St. Louis, it's not a lot of things around us as far as major employers. So I'm always thinking about, okay, how do we get students out of the community, but at the same time to have consistent transportation to be able to get to where they're going? Okay. So, and that looks different for everybody. So we have an employer that last summer, they were like, we are going to get the students an Uber every single day. They wrote that in the contract, and we were pumped about that, right? Like that's a fail-safe plan. And then we found out that Uber didn't run at the times it needed to be running to pick the student up. So they started calling. They're like, "What are we going to do? We want to keep this student." So we ended up having to do a taxi service. Now that came with some flexibility, right? Because there's a price change. That's not necessarily our agreement, but they were committed to us and the student. You want to look for employers that are committed. You don't want someone that's going to say, "Oh, one problem happened. We never want to see you again." That's probably not a good partnership for you and your school. Okay. As well as diversifying the workforce. As I stated, most of our students are African Americans, and we talk about those industrial trades. It's really hard to get them in the union. It's really hard to get them on construction sites, right? Because some companies, although they need people so bad, they are not ready to diversify and update, right? So having real conversations with people to say, my student experienced this, what can we do, right? And depending upon their response, we might not ever come back or we might continue, right? That's up to them. But don't be afraid to leave a partnership if it's going to do harm to the student. Creating and sustaining partnerships. Now, I find that it's easy to create the partnership, but it's hard to sustain, right? That is the hardest part for me. And the way I do that is with the employer, I want to say I almost become their best friend. I call them. I tell them happy birthday. I write down little details about them just to keep them in line and on my mind. I might send them little updates about what's going on at our school. Because what we do with employers is we put them on a shelf. After we're done using them, we don't use them again until we need them again. But it's hard by that time because organizational shifts, people change positions. But if you're constantly sending out information about what's going on in your program, they're going to more likely be able to engage. Now, student communication. You all know sometimes students go through a hard time and they just fall off the map. They stop answering the phone. They don't text you. They might not even show up for work. I hunt my students down. I won't say it any other way, but I also let them know that you absolutely have to communicate. That is bare minimum. I won't accept anything less. And if you can't communicate, you won't be in the program. The program is not for everybody because it's a major responsibility to show up to work every single day and fulfill the requirements of work-based learning. Now, for student preparation, like I said, we do skills prep. It's not just a one-time touch, right? So if I have a student that comes to me and said, well, I'm not going to be at work today, I might help them write the email. I might exactly tell them what to say on the phone, right? I want them to be able to come to me anytime they have questions on how to interact with an employer. Recently, I had a student that started an internship and his checks were not making sense. And he was like, I just don't know what to say because I don't want to come off wrong because I really like the job. So I called somebody to say, well, what's going on? And that person said, honestly, I don't know. So I'm going to call you back. And I told him, sometimes you're going to be in a position where the person is not going to know. And you're just going to need to advocate and advocate and advocate until they can give you the right answer. I know that was really quick, but we have a short amount of time. But does anybody have any questions? Oh, thank you. Thank you. I do a cultural climate survey for me personally, depending upon the environment. And then before they get started, I also ask them the demographics. So how many women are on the side? How many people of color on the side? Who can you offer as a mentor? What does the senior leadership look like? Because sometimes you will go places and they have no women, right? And I'm sending a young lady there. So I had a welding company and I had a young lady. She knew she wanted to be a welder. She At the end of it, they said that they didn't want to invite her back because they feel like she was not a good fit. Now, to me, what that says, I said, well, what do you mean by that? Because she knows she wants to be a welder. She doesn't want to be anything else. And then when I did some research, I said, well, did you ever talk to any ladies there? Did you feel included? All these type of things. And that was my first year. So I didn't kind of have all these procedures in place. And that's why the check-in is important, right? It's not enough for me to evaluate the site at the very beginning. It's like ongoing. Are you feeling included? Do you feel like you're treated with respect? Do you feel like they talk to you appropriately? So it's a multiple touch point kind of thing. But like I said, if I feel like it's a no, we cut it. So we offer work-based learning, internship, and pre-apprenticeship. So everything we do is paid. I don't believe anybody should do free work. I don't care if you're an adult, a teen, anything. Everybody needs money. Especially when we think about our youth can go get paid $15 an hour at Chick-fil-A. So why would we want them to go do something else for no pay? So internships run all year long. So I have students right now that 2 are internship and they're seniors, but they're not in work-based learning. So it just depends on the students and the opportunities that's available. I'm going to put my coworker on the spot, but Mrs. White, she's down there. She's the career pathways counselor. So we work in tandem to go to the middle school to do career exploration. We do 3 touch points with them to talk about personality and career cluster and what to expect at the high school, and they do a tour. So we do that at the middle school, and then we just got a partnership with the state to start doing VR headsets. So we're going to start doing VR headsets at the freshman and sophomore level for career exploration. They actually come with a curriculum. So the only thing the person has to do is facilitate it. I do have a contract. I can send that to Heather about what the expectation is. And I also I talk to their parent on the phone because students forge signatures. So I physically pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, did you get my letter? And if you didn't get my letter, do you have an email that I can send it to? And are you okay with this? Because I want to make sure that they get the information, because with students, you never know who signed it. So I also let the parent know if it's a really competitive thing, what the student should be doing, so I can have their support. Yes, I'm not afraid of courageous conversations. That's what I like to call it. But sometimes they're open and sometimes they're not. But either way, I'm going to give them the feedback if I feel like it's necessary. Yes, because in a small place, word gets around, right? And reputation is everything when you have very limited employers. So I think that's why it's so important to handle those situations delicately. But at the same time, you're your student's biggest advocate. So, you can't be afraid to let them know when my student attended this. I had a student last summer that had a horrible experience. And when the company approached our district this year, it went through the chain of command. So I got called in on a meeting and they were there. And I called them out and I was like, you know what? The last time my student went there, you know what they told me? And of course they were like, oh, I can't believe that. But you can't believe it because you fired that person who was the program coordinator. But then in return, they did promise me that this summer that things will be better and they will hire a new person, which they did. You don't have to terminate always bad relationships. Sometimes if the company is willing to work and see kind of the wrong in that person or the leadership, they'll fix it and still want to work with you because it's a bad reputation on them as well. I tell my students that connections are everything. And some of them might buy into it and really that resonates with them. And some won't, some won't take the leap. But I also let them know that before I got in this role, I was a teacher. And I never wanted to be a teacher. But I knew that, to be honest, I respect all the educators in the room. I knew to get my foot in the door, right? I had to pay my stripes, and I had to get in the classroom, and I had to be willing to do something that I necessarily didn't want to do to be able to get to where I wanted to go. And I also let them know about times when I was a graduate assistant. We got paid once a month, $1,200 a month. So, those experiences, they mean something. I have 2 seniors right now, and they go to Impact Construction. And they were like, what's the pay? What's the pay? And it's half day and it's only $12 an hour. Now, my other student was working at McDonald's and the other one was working at like a craft shop. Both of them were getting paid more. And I was like, the job ends at 4 p.m. So if you want to go to another job at 5 p.m., you're more than welcome. But unless you want to be at McDonald's and the craft shop forever, then you need to make the sacrifice because you never know what doors this will open. So for some kids, it will be meaningful, right? It'll impact them, but for some, it won't. And some you might have to drill on. So if you have, like, this is only my second year in this position. So I'll be able to bring students back from this year to talk to my seniors next year to say, oh, they did these internships and look where it led to. So also getting that student voice once I've been in a position for a little bit longer. There is no safety pay, but they know that I will help them find a job. So with our partnerships, we have like our advisory board is huge. It's like 50 people. But as far as active partnerships, it's like 17 active partnerships. So I can always get you a job. So you just got to trust in me and believe in me. And if something happens, I'll be able to line you up with something else or help you at least try to find something. I'm not just going to leave them. I always tell my students, I don't just go away when you graduate, right? I'm still here. I'm still at the building. Send me an email.